So that took me 6 months, but sometimes it doesn't take you 6 months. One time somebody asked me, why do Mexicans like to sell oranges and roses on the side of freeways? That's not going to take a study. My response is simple. What do you want them to sell? Steinway pianos? Come on. Simple economics, simple capitalism. Nothing wrong with that. So anyway, so I'm always discovering things. This, I think, is my all-time favorite discovery because I never imagined this in a million years. Dear Mexican, can you tell me the meaning of the word aguacate? All I know about this delicious fruit is that it originated on this continent. Signed guacamole man. He made that. Dear Gabacho, aguacate is a Spanish word for avocado, but its Nahuatl meaning is more rustic. Balls. According to Ana Maria de Benitez's 1974 classic, Pre-Hispanic Cooking, really good book if you want to buy it, it's bilingual in English and Spanish. Quote, the name aguacate, avocado, comes from ahuacacuahuitl, aguacatl meaning testicle, and guahuitl meaning tree, hence, tree of testicles. A Freudian might argue then that guacamole is castration gone gourmet. Women prepare it so they can symbolically crush the macho huevos that keep them repressed. Mexican hombres scarf it down in the belief that they'll become manlier. And the popularity of guacamole among gabachos, the California Avocado Commission estimates that consumers purchase 40 million pounds of their cash crop during Super Bowl weekend alone. It's true fact. It's actually an American plot to devolve the Mexican nation. Then again, an avocado just might be an avocado. A wrinkly and sure, testicular fruit. I've been eating avocados my entire life. I never imagined they mean that, but once you hold them, yeah. Wow. Absolutely amazing when you can find out how to call them. So the final question I'm going to read for tonight, it actually got a man suspended from work. So again, needless to say, the column is controversial, and so what happened was, this would have been, yeah, in the fall of 2006, a man named Bob Diefenbach, Bob went down to, he worked at a hospital in Oregon, so he goes down to Albuquerque, and he picks up a copy of the Albuquerque Alibi, which is a paper out there that carries my column. He's never heard of my column before. He thinks it's the funniest thing he's ever read. So he takes the paper with him up to Oregon. He shows it to his Mexican coworker. The Mexican coworker thinks it's the funniest thing he's ever read. He then shows it to his white coworker. The white coworker thinks it's the funniest thing she ever read. And on. They just keep passing my column down the line. Eventually somebody makes Xerox copies of it. They poster it all over the hospital so that doctors and nurses and orderlies and patients are getting it. It's just completely covered. The following day, Bob gets called into the HR office and they tell him, you're getting suspended from work for 5 days without pay and you can't appeal your suspension. And you're getting suspended for racism and sexual harassment for distributing this column. The sexual harassment part of the column, and remember, all of this just from one column. The sexual harassment part of the column, it's not in this book, but I'll always remember it because honestly, it was just such an innocuous question. The question, or my answer was so innocuous. The question was this. It was a Mexican woman who wrote it and said that her white husband wanted to learn Spanish, so he's tuning into CNN en Español, but every time that he tunes into CNN en Español, he hears chickens clucking in the background. So he wants to know, why does CNN en Español have chickens clucking in the background? And I said, sorry, sorry, honey, your husband isn't tuning into CNN en Español. He tuned into the Farm Channel. But from there, I launched into a short history of the use of chickens in American ethnic humor. Chickens have always been used to make fun of poor people in American humor. In other words, you have radio broadcasts, you have news television, you have movies, and you hear, poor people always have their chickens and their roosters crowing. Like if any of you saw the film Borat, you'll remember that another great satirist. That early in the scene, Borat, this supposedly Kazakh journalist making a documentary about America, he's in the subway in New York with an old suitcase. He opens up the suitcase and a chicken pops up and starts running around the subway. Everyone was seeing it. We're laughing and laughing because we're thinking, Borat, you unassimilated idiot. We do not allow chickens in subways in New York City. We do not allow chickens in civilization anymore. So similarly, when you hear people bashing Mexicans, a lot of times you'll hear on radio, you'll hear roosters crowing. People say, oh, Mexicans have chickens in their backyard. So, this whole long pseudo-academic discussion about the use of chickens. Then I wrote some sentence, which I always forget, and then I went to my conclusion, which went like this. I said, ultimately, Mexican men treat women the same way they treat chickens, as purveyors of breasts, eggs, and little else. That's just me trying to be clever saying Mexican men are macho. If I said Mexican men are macho, I don't think anybody would have a problem with it. But because I try to make a joke out of it, that's sexual harassment. I don't know. I actually thought that was a weak answer, but it got a man suspended from work. So that's the sexual harassment part. There's a supposedly racist question, and please let me know if you think it's racist. Dear Mexican, why do Spics and Mix get along so well? Is it because both races are drunk, fornicating, degenerate Catholics? Signed, Don Mulatino, who's an Irish friend of mine, by the way. Dear Mick, get your racial slurs correct. Mexicans are beaners, not Spics. Spics was actually created, a little bit of history, Spic was created specifically for Puerto Ricans, so that's what a Spic is. So Mexicans are beaners, not Spics. Otherwise, you nailed it on la cabeza, cabrón. And the similarities don't end there. The Irish were the Mexicans of the United States before the Mexicans. Millions of them migrated to this country destitute, as indentured servants, a precursor to the Bracero program, and even as illegal immigrants. They were fleeing a homeland under siege by evil Protestants, only to find similar treatment in the States. Gabachos here maligned the Irish for their Catholicism, their funny English, big families, and constant inebriation, stereotypes popularized by the mainstream press. But the Irish fought back. They formed gangs and voting blocks, and in the case of the St. Patrick's Battalion, Los San Patricios, hundreds of soldiers defected to the Mexican side during the 1846 Mexican-American War. But the Irish in America, to paraphrase Noel Ignatiev's famous 1995 book, eventually became white, while Mexicans will forever remain Mexicans in the eyes of Gabachos. Nevertheless, the Spic-Mic connection continues. I know many children of Irish-Mexican heritage who call themselves leprechanos. A miscegenation of the word leprechaun and Chicano. That's what they call themselves, not me. I think it's genius. Many Irish-American civic organizations support amnesty for illegals, since about 50,000 Irish immigrants have no papers. Mexico and Ireland have harsh laws against illegal immigration themselves, and must constantly deal with their idiot cousins across the border, Guatemala and Northern Ireland. And Gabachos have warped our precious St. Patrick's Day and Cinco de Mayo holidays into bacchanals, booze, and women. On second thought, that's a compliment. So, you know, again, it's a satirical take. Obviously, the Irish did suffer the same discrimination as Mexicans. I mean, you read the literature that people had about Irish immigrants, it was even nastier in some ways than Mexicans. You see, like, editorial cartoons. When you see racist depictions of Mexicans, are usually, you know, like the Mexican guy, but when they would draw out the Irish, they would draw them as monkeys, as apes. I mean, these are prominent political cartoons. They would draw them as apes. Irish were hated. Of course, the Irish eventually, they became American, so we have that similarity. But because you try to have fun and say, yeah, you know, the Irish are drunk and Mexicans were, as my friend said, drunk, fornicated, degenerate Catholics, I guess that's racist. Who knows? Anyways, that's my column, Ask a Mexican. At this point, if you folks have any questions, please ask away. And raise your hand. Don't be shy. Question in the back.
Jonathan Gold was here a few years ago.
Yeah.
And I think I stumped him with a question. So I came here tonight specifically to ask you. I wanted to find out where I can get a great churro in anywhere in Southern California. I was in Orange County, but I think like El Morro and DF and I can't find it. So
where can you find a great churro in Southern California? Obviously, Los Angeles is the domain of Mr. Gold, so I do not dare trek on this territory. I know. I don't know anything about Los Angeles cuisine, not at all. I mean, I know the cuisine in Thai Town, and I know a couple of taco trucks, but that's it, because my domain is Orange County. Jonathan Gold being the Pulitzer Prize winning food critic for the LA Weekly. A good churro, you know, there's a good churro sold at a restaurant called Gabby's Mexican Kitchen in the city of Orange. So they fry the churro. It's not too sugary and not too cinnamony, but it's enough so you get the flavor. It's fried perfectly, so the outside is crispy and the inside it's not mushy like bad churros are. And then they have two dipping sauces. One of chocolate, Mexican chocolate, so that gritty, slightly bitter stuff, and then they have cajeta, which is made from goat milk. It's a good churro. Is it a life-changing churro? It can be on some days, but that's the place I'm going to tell you to go. Gabby's Mexican Kitchen. Gabby's Mexican Kitchen. So thank you. I love food questions. So.